Recorded Books presents The Tangleroot Palace by Marjorie Liu, narrated by Catherine Ho. Introduction. Greetings, friends. I started writing this introduction when the COVID-19 pandemic was just beginning to unfold. An early adopter of its seriousness, I was living in Japan, close to the epicenter, and it was strange and surreal watching the societal threads, what we take for granted, pull apart bit by bit. Now, months later, I've returned to finish this introduction, and while I'd like to say the intervening time has given me a new perspective around my work, the only shift for me has been a deeper understanding of the limits of human imagination, including mine. That said, here we are together, and here, before you, are fragments of my imagination, sometimes limited, sometimes not. I've never been someone who lingers over my past work. I am very much a creature of the present. When I write, I live for the moment, passing through a story, inhabiting the skin of the characters, and when that story is done, so am I. But I mean done. With some rare exceptions, I have almost no recall over the content of my previous work, whether it's a novel, short story, or comic. Broad strokes, yes, I can say, there's a merman, a gargoyle, a tiger shapeshifter. But after that, my memory skids right off the road. Even now, as I write this, I keep trying to test myself by looking at the titles of my novels, and it's dire, folks. I honestly don't know what the hell I've done these past 17 years, except that apparently I wrote a lot of words. This amnesia was not some surprise. For years I've thought about why this happens, why the wall goes up after I write the end. I asked a friend once, and she commented offhand that perhaps writing is like channeling a spirit in a prolonged seance. The spirit moves through me, but it's not as if I want it hanging around when I'm done talking. I send away that which no longer serves me and move on to the next conversation. Which is a nice and tidy way of thinking about it, but one could just as easily argue that I'm phobic when it comes to introspection. Remembering my work would require remembering me, and, unfortunately, that's its own challenge. But anyway, that's a long way of saying that when I was approached regarding this collection, I had a hard time remembering what short fiction I had written that could actually fill a book. The answer, I realized in short order, was quite a lot. Nor is this collection entirely complete. There are a small handful of stories still floating around in other anthologies, but this is an excellent overview of what happens when one never says no to offers of work. With one exception, all the stories contained herein were written over an 8-year period or so, while I was pounding out paranormal romance novels and urban fantasies and working for Marvel Comics, as perhaps the first woman of color writing for them. These are the stories of my 20s and very early 30s, slices of prose from a formative decade when I was still figuring things out. An ongoing process, I assure you. Produced between crushing deadlines, driven less by ideas and more by emotions. They're time capsules, each one capturing a different stage of me, who I was becoming. Those are also the years when I was living in the Midwest, in the center of a forest, an impenetrable, tangled forest where every night the coyotes would howl, a forest where I never set foot because I never felt invited. But I had forgotten that, too, and I'm somewhat amused that it took me reading these stories to remember what it felt like to live in the middle of that forest and to see how persistently those trees entered and still enter my work. These 7 stories are not presented in the order they were written, and some of them have been lightly, and not so lightly, edited. I know, but I couldn't help myself. Don't ever let a writer, after more than a decade away from a story, have access to it again. They'll compulsively bring their new selves to the page and start renovating. Still, these are more or less the same as they were. Tales about warrior women and runaway princesses, ordinary girls battling fairy queens, a post-pandemic apocalyptic tale of an Amish vampire and the young woman who loves him, a teen who uses dolls to...
Sample complete. Ready to continue?